My name is Johanna Rupp, your host this afternoon. I'd really like to thank you in the beginning just for coming out and sharing your Saturday afternoon with us at Book Passage. It means everything to us. It's the way we get to have incredible authors, just like today, so thank you. Today, Book Passage is very proud to welcome Linda Mornell, founder of Summer Search, a nonprofit organization that helps students gain access to enriching and empowering summer programs. In her book, Forever Change, Linda shares the incredible benefits students gain when allowed to come together to live and to work. She explores her personal journey and how it led her to enter the nonprofit world. She also discusses her conviction that these bonding experiences promote strength, resilience, self-confidence, and that those experiences should be available for all young people, regardless of economic background. So with that, please warmly welcome Linda Mornell.
Thank you, Johanna. I appreciate it. And I appreciate so many of you, again, on this beautiful Saturday in the middle of the day, taking your day to come. So thank you everybody for taking the time. Can you hear? Can everybody hear okay? Okay. We have an hour, and I'm going to stop promptly at 1:45 because Sasha Cabrera is here to read the epilogue, which he wrote in the book, and I'm very excited about that moment. So we have about 45 minutes, and I want to do three things. First of all, I want to tell you a little, most of you know Summer Search, but some of you don't. So, hi, Pat. I want to take a few minutes and put the program in a context for you so that you can understand some of the discussion and some of the questions and answers. And then I want to tell you a few things that I've learned in the past 25 years. Then we'll have a Q&A, and Sasha will conclude with reading his epilogue. So, Summer Search was inspired by my three children. We all grew up in Bolinas, and in the 70s, Bolinas was a pretty wild place, and the kids didn't really fit into that culture. So we decided to put them in a private high school for high school, and they didn't fit in that culture either. And they were also probably maybe 2 years behind academically. So summer programs helped, and it helped a lot. So they all did Outward Bound. There were three of them. My middle daughter did Outward Bound extremely reluctantly. So we told her that she had a choice. She could go voluntarily or she could go involuntarily. It was up to her. So she chose to go involuntarily. But she got the most out of it, actually. So I was in private practice with my husband at that time, counseling practice. So I started recommending summer programs to the students in my private practice, who were also not so sure about doing a wilderness expedition for a month. But again, it's proved to be incredibly helpful. 2 weeks ago, I did a reading at Book Inks in the city, and two adults walked in unexpectedly that I haven't seen for a long time. The first was Selena, an African-American alumni from West Oakland in 1992. When I met Selena, she was living with her grandmother and younger siblings in a condemned housing in West Oakland, no electricity. In the Q&A, Selena shared that being so poor growing up, she got all kinds of services, turkeys for Thanksgiving and used clothes, but they just made her feel even more impoverished. But Summer Search was different. It was reciprocal, meaning that Summer Search didn't look at Selena as poor and see poor. They saw potential. The other unexpected person at Books Inc. was a man from my private practice. Today he is 42, and the last time I saw him he was 14. I talked him into going on a wilderness expedition with Outward Bound, and now decades later, again in the Q&A, he talked about how successful that choice was and how it still benefits his life. So a little bit more about Summer Search. I got the idea from watching my kids, and the kids at the private school, it was University High in the city, where 80% of the kids are the richest, 10% are the poorest, and with a sort of a smattering of middle class students like ourselves. My thought was, wouldn't it be fun for the scholarship kids at university to do something special in their summers? So it began. 14 students, 1990, from schools Oakland High, University, and Sasha Kovriga, a Russian Jew, all went on programs all over the world. This picture here, all of those 4 students are in the book, different chapters, but you'll recognize Sasha is front and center as well. I'd like to read to you what the first student wrote. They all write an essay when they get back from the summers. What he wrote. This was a young man from the Sunnydale projects in the Bayview of San Francisco. He'd never been on an airplane, and he ended up, hey, you guys want to come sit down? Jay and Liz, oh my goodness, come sit down. Leah, wow, this is great. We got plenty of seats here, you don't need to stand up. I want to read, this was a huge deal for him, obviously. So when he got back, this is the essay he wrote. I was born in the ghetto, a place of destruction where despair prevails. In this portion of the world, kindness was alien to me, and because of this, I believe that kindness was lost. My eyes have been opened to the capabilities of the human heart. Well, that was it. I was in. And that was it for 25 years. But I did learn something, and that is that the other kids, including Sasha, I think after they got back from that first big trip, sort of pulled back and I think actually got a little depressed. They came back transformed and changed and different, but they came back to the same limitations and realities. So one trip, one intervention was a little naive. Summer Search became a more extensive program lasting 3 years of high school with 2 summer trips. The first one, a wilderness expedition, a great thing to level the playing field real fast. Everybody has to work together. And the second one, all different kinds of opportunities, but usually in a trip abroad, family homestay, other opportunities. And then we had added college counseling for our seniors. And what I came to call, and we might get back to this in the Q&A, inside mentoring throughout. In 1995, I hired the first people to help me, and the 3 of us developed the program together. Jay opened the first satellite program in Boston, and Catherine became my partner in the Bay Area. We are now, 25 years later, in 7 different cities and serve over 3,000 students annually and growing. 75 to 80% of our students graduate from college. This compares to their peer group, which is about 11%. Jay is here. He's just one of the people I asked to sit down as part of the team in 1995. So I would like to tell you what I've learned, which is backed up by the current research. And that is, poverty kills. Poverty limits, crushes, destroys families, hopes, health, and dreams. I emphasize this because there is greater income inequality in the United States today than in any other developed country. So how does poverty impact adolescents the Summer Search has worked with over the years? There are 3 areas I want to emphasize, along with the words of a Summer Search student, LeVar. The first is isolation. The second is lack of intellectual stimulation. And the third is feedback from their environment that is more critical than positive. That includes gun violence and discrimination. Summer Search interrupted. Hi, come on in. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Summer Search interrupts these 3 challenges head on. In the words of LeVar, he grew up in the notorious Acorn projects of West Oakland. His single-parent mother with 3 little boys lived on the edge in a very dangerous environment. When she lost her job, things began to fall apart. And LeVar was placed in foster care at the age of 7. By telling and retelling his story while I listened, he broke isolation by finding his voice. He wrote, I was raised by the foster care system where I learned to build a wall around me to protect myself from the outside world. and from my own feelings. Because I was constantly moving, I never got to keep anything of my own. I wanted to be dead to the reality that I never had a father and that my mother used drugs and that I would become another lost soul. LeVar continued breaking isolation and getting intellectual stimulation through his first trip. I told Linda that I had trouble concentrating and that I wanted to go to Africa. She told me I was too immature to go to Africa, but she had a plan to help me with my concentration. In Maine, I walked through mud with an 80-pound canoe on my shoulders. The next thing I knew is my shoe falls off, but I keep going with just one shoe. That was the end of my problem with concentration. As for reversing more negative than positive feedback, I found my love for family, ambitions for a future, and a chance to see who I really was in a place called Spain. My new family saw me as a gifted, caring, strong, and funny young man who simply had received a terrible start in life. Soon, I began to see myself in the same light as they did. So, what does it take to dramatically change a life? Summer Church staff today are working so hard in 7 different offices, breaking isolation to some of our most severely isolated students, providing ongoing listening and insight mentoring day in, day out, and bringing positive reinforcement and hope into some of our most neglected communities. We know that Summer Search students graduate from college, 75% of them. LeVar graduated from college. Morehouse, I was there. What did he graduate to? Other than Summer Search, there was no real network of support and very little applause. Yet he persevered and went on to get a master's degree at Atlanta University and a PhD in political science at the University of Miami in Ohio. Then, as he neared completion, the heights he had worked so hard to reach began to backfire. He was in debt, old fears, depressive thinking, and problems with concentration reappeared, blocking completion of his dissertation, which he had to have if he was ever going to fulfill his dream to become a professor. One morning last year, he called me panicky to ask if he'd come to Bolinas, my home, and have a quiet place to write. The PhD program at his school was closing down, and he was just one of 3 students left. I wasn't sure what to do. In a moment of uneasiness, I told him I would do anything to help him. If he wanted to come to the Bay Area, he could certainly have a quiet place to write at my home. Of course. I didn't hear from him for a month. Then he emailed me and said that for the first time in 23 years, I had given him bad advice. He needed to figure out on his own rather than run away. And of course he was right. After that, I didn't hear from him for several months. In September, I emailed him again, asking carefully, "Any news?" This was his response. Sorry. Good afternoon, men of Morehouse. My name is LeVar Lamar Smith, and I am your professor for political science 285. It has been a long journey, yet I am grateful for the hard lessons. I hope that my passion and drive to succeed, along with my commitment to teaching, will inspire you in your journey to reach higher, go beyond, and give back. Gentlemen, let's begin. So, thank you. Crash course in 25 years of Summer Search history. But a lot of you are either former Search students that are here tonight and today. I guess it's still afternoon. And hi, come on in. and have some things I know that you want to say. A lot of you are supporters and loyal supporters for so many years, and Jay is here and students are here. So let's have some questions from the audience where this is all new to, and then we'll move on to people that have more familiarity. So what questions do you have? Yes.
You had mentioned that it's a summer program.
Yes.
And then they go back.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any kind of reinforcement during the school year before the next summer program for them? Somebody they talk to or come around?
Yes, they all have a mentor. That's a very good question. Right. They all have a mentor, a trained mentor on staff. So we don't have volunteer mentors. And they call their mentor once a week. So we also provide what I've come to call, it's the title of the book, Insight Mentoring, which means it's an opportunity for students to learn to talk about their feelings and engage in introspection, which is a fairly unique thing. Yes?
Do you think that your model is replicable on a national scale? I mean,
That's the $64,000 question, isn't it? We are now in 7 different cities. So Jay, people said, oh, we can't replicate this. Jay went to, the first office was in Boston. And someone said, well, why did you pick Boston? I said, well, that's where Jay lives. So it's finding the talent, finding the right person. And there was a lot of skepticism, but we did indeed replicate the program in Boston. And we're now in 7 different areas. I don't know how large we can get because it's so hands-on. It takes such a long period of time to train people. We're getting better at that, but we are planning on expanding.
or could you see yourselves as mentoring other similar programs? So that you
That's something we should be doing more of because I think we've learned a lot about how to impact change in young people. And we should be doing that. That was one of the reasons for the book. Yes?
Could you name the 7th city?
Yes, I can. I think so.
I mean, I know you can.
I'll try.
Would you please?
Well, I don't know. It's an increasing challenge. We started in San Francisco. Boston was the next. I believe New York was the next. Seattle, Philadelphia, and then we have, that's not quite in order, but then we have the North Bay, which is Sonoma and Solano counties and Napa, and the South Bay, Silicon Valley, which has a huge school district of increasing Latino students. Not much in the Midwest yet. Yes?
When you're selecting students, what are you looking for?
Oh, I love this question. I love this question. Ryan, what would you say?
It's up to her discretion, I think.
We have a mentor, Ryan. What would you say?
Well, for me, it's been such a long time
See,
ago.
he wants to talk. Go ahead.
It's been such a long time ago, around 25 years or so, or no, around 20 years. But I would say that you need to have hope. You have to have passion. I think that you have to at least see yourself going somewhere, even though that you might not have the means. You at least have to see yourself going somewhere with some kind of help, you know? And that's how it was for me, at least at that point in time.
The relationships we cultivate in our schools are critical to finding students because we can't have students come and say, I want to be a part of Summer Search. They're nominated by somebody in the school. And we ask them to look for students specifically with resilience or reflection, a work ethic, or some kind of performance in their life. Not necessarily in school, but they understand that hard work will get them somewhere in their life. And the huge piece that I think is oftentimes ignored in other youth-serving organizations is the altruism piece. Students that see that they can impact other people. That, hey, if I go somewhere, I can influence more people in my family, in my community. I think that's part of what's made Summer Search unique and different than a lot of other organizations, that heart, that altruism, that giving back piece that we see today with the alumni here in the audience is a big part of it.
We'll get a few more voices, but very typically the Summer Search student is the one in the family who is trying to take care of the others, who sort of emerges. It's not necessarily the oldest, but the one that tries to become a caretaker. And so I would say 100% of our kids are going to graduate from high school anyway. These are beautiful kids, wonderful kids. The problem is, with so many of them assuming adult responsibilities at an early age, they miss a lot of developmental periods. So they would go off to a community college maybe, and after a couple of years run out of gas, because they haven't had the nurturing that they needed to fully develop themselves, if that makes sense to you. Araceli, what would you say?
I think he hit the nail on the head, but I remember my interview very specifically, and I remember Linda being there. And I think it was just kind of, they see something in you that maybe if they could nourish you or make you feel like confident, that they know that you might be successful at something bigger. And I definitely think the altruism aspect of it is huge, because I think like over the years, as I start kind of reflecting back on it a little bit, I'm like, it really was instilled in me. Like, you know, what I do now really does trickle down and helps others, and in a way that I never even thought that could be possible. Like, I always think back and I'm like, I wonder if Linda knew. Like, she knew when she picks these students that like this person has that heart that they will continue to help others. And I'm an attorney. I've been practicing for 3 years, but I do public interest work, so I work for Legal Aid of Marin. So a lot of the clients that I help are low income, and they're monolingual Spanish speakers, many immigrants, and that's kind of like, I don't know that I could have made it there without, you know, this big stepping stone. I know a lot of the staff there was very instrumental. Sandy was great, and I don't even know how I would have been able to apply to college without her help. So.
Araceli's from the North Bay office, and I went up there for an event maybe 2 years ago, and she was there. I hadn't seen her for a number of years, and she turned around and saw me and started to cry. Do you remember that? Yeah. 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 Other questions? Yes.
How do you gain entree into the school systems in the different cities? And have there been any that have like not been interested in going forward with the program?
Are you a teacher?
No.
No. It was very hard in the beginning. I remember I was alone. It was 1990. I had a contact at Oakland High School, a counselor. I would drive all the way to Oakland, and they forgot, and they had a meeting, and they were also very skeptical. There are a lot. I later learned there are a lot of programs in trying to get into the school system to impact, but usually they want the resources. They want to be paid for their idea. So the schools are very resistant. From your question, you must know that. I finally, a teacher at Oakland High, the counselor sent out a flyer. You know, do you want to send your kids to camp or something like that? And so she said, who wants to go to camp? So the kids raised their hand. So I went and I interviewed all those kids, and one of them was a teacher's son, because that was an early value we wanted to give back to the teaching profession. And he came to her room, and she said, well, you know, what camp are you going to? And he said, I'm not sure, but I think I'm going to Thailand. And she thought, oh my God, I got this nutcase into the school here. These summer experiential education programs are literally all over the world and available primarily to affluent kids. Yes?
How do you fund it?
How do I fund it? How do we fund it? Oh, well, it's easier now because our results are so extraordinary. 70 to 80% college graduation versus 11% from our key populations is overwhelming in the field. So it's a lot easier now. In the beginning, it was very hard. I had some help with a local person in West Marin. In the book, I identify her as a Rockefeller, which she was. So that helped. I had a board that was very helpful in the beginning and said yes to my surprise. And then it was 3 calls a day. I promised myself, no matter what, I was going to make 3, no matter how stupid I sounded in the first and second, I was going to make the third. So it escalated. Ted Williams, who is president of our national board, has been one of those individuals that emerged who loves the program and has helped us expand in ways that we never would have otherwise. This is Ted Williams right here.
Linda,
Petey.
how
I'm surrounded by my
How
friends
many-
and
how
students.
many-
This is so cool.
what percentage of kids are turned down, and how do you feel about that? When you got to interview someone and they're not quite right, that they really need the program. What happens to those guys?
That's a really wonderful question. I was really worried about that in the beginning, but in many ways it's self-selection. So we tell the teachers what we're looking for, they recommend students, and if they want an interview with the summer search staff and take that next step, they have to write a one-page essay. About 70% of those students will not write that essay. And I didn't know this in the beginning, but according to Lillian Rubin, who's now deceased, she was very big at Berkeley, one of the real predominant signs of resiliency is an ability to separate from parents. And so many kids cannot. And also, they hear free trip, but then they find out, yes, they're accepted into the program. They get to go on a wilderness expedition for 3 weeks to a month. They'll probably be the only minority student, scholarship student. They'll be with rich white kids, and it's all free, and they get to go. Now, this doesn't always sound attractive. And in the beginning, less so. Now as we're more well known, a lot of kids understand and can make that leap of faith. But in many ways, it's still self-selection.
I can just add a little bit of
Yes,
context
Ryan.
to that question. I think Linda has, in the beginning, in the early years, trained people executing the interviews when students got into that room so well that we really committed to, and I think have executed and continue to execute, that student, whoever sits down in front of these 2, 3, or 4 strangers, is going to walk away from that 45-minute interview having learned something very significant about themselves that they can apply to their life the second they walk out of the door. And we say that to the kids, and I'm not sure they all believe us, but I guarantee you when they walk out, that's the case. So that's one thing we can give, because we can't accept every student we see. That's one of the hardest parts of our work. We've also gotten a lot better currently partnering with other youth development organizations so that we're not only duplicating our services and serving the same group of kids that are in 5 programs, but if a student does not get into summer search, that name now trickles down to 3 other organizations in our region. Now they're going to be on their radar. So we're really, I think we've done a much better job, at least in our office in North Bay. I know the other sites are doing that too. So, but you raise a good point. It is a great challenge seeing a student that needs us but might not be the right fit at this time.
We also, there's that self-selection with writing the essay, PD, and then there's another self-selection. If we're unsure, we tend to accept that student, and then the process of the weekly check-ins begins, and the push to start engaging in introspection. And some teenagers love this and blossom and are ready for it, some are not. So that first month after being accepted into the program, that's another period of drop. And we figure that that's for the kids' safety, because we don't want them to drop from their trip, because that's a huge failure to not complete their trip. And our students, I think only 2%, maybe 3%, and this is 3,000 kids, finish these trips. Things they've never done before, and facing all kinds of challenges. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. Yes, Paula.
Linda, when do you bring them into the program? Typically it's freshmen in high
Sophomores.
school?
Sophomore
Sorry, I
year.
missed that.
Yeah. Sophomore, and then they're throughout high
They have
school,
that 2 summers.
and we're now following the first 2 years of college because, not to that, not so intensively, but research shows that if the kid finishes the first 2 years of college, they're going to continue.
Okay, good.
Very likely to continue. Who are you guys over here? Where?
We work at Outward Bound, California.
Oh, wow.
I also worked in Minnesota, and I've had summer search kids on my trips up there. Yeah, I worked in the office for Outward Bound for a couple years, signing kids up for trips, talking about them before they go out there, giving them an idea of what they're going to encounter, and it is an incredible experience for a lot of these students.
How would you characterize summer search students?
The best students.
Yes.
Whenever you look on your, we have a lot of really good students, but whenever you look on your sort of roster of the kids you're going to be going out for the next 3 weeks with, and Outward Bound might be different than some of the other programs. Those kids often aren't the only scholarship program. We have a lot of other feeders. But you're always excited, like, oh, we have a summer search kid. And it's, I think, another really cool thing about it, and I think you talked about this in your book too, is they the other students are also learning something about themselves and the world, spending 3 weeks under a tarp with a kid from a completely different background, because that doesn't come out in the first few days. Like, that's not the first thing you talk about, and still, like, the conversations are like, oh, you've been to France multiple times, you have a favorite restaurant there because your family's super rich. And this other kid in the tarp's like, I'm taking care of my family and my life's much different. And they, like, I often think that for a lot of those kids, like, in the circles they live in, the, like, poor people, if you're privileged, like, exist, but you don't really know it. It's like something in TV. And if you're really poor, like, rich people exist and you know about it, you've never met anybody that is like that. And then they spend these 3 weeks in the tarp together, and it's just awesome.
It is awesome. And the good programs are interested in diversity and immediately jumped on it. See, in the beginning, I went to the all Outward Bound and all these other programs and said, if I identify and prepare a student and psychologically and physically and guarantee that they will be an asset to the group, which I tell the kids, I guarantee they will be an asset to the group. What will you do for me? And we usually get half off the tuition. So it's something that works for everybody. And an Outward Bound instructor from North Carolina just told me last week that you guys have no idea how much you give to us with your kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I work in North Carolina too a bunch, and out there we mostly had summers with kids that come down from like sort of the east. So I guess, it was awesome.
Makes everybody better, right? Have diversity.
Yeah.
That's,
I mean, I've had summers where kids changed my life in different ways too, just the conversations we've had out there.
A funny story, because we talk about disparity in wealth. A summer service student from 1994, I think, went to Ghana on a community service trip. And a beautiful girl, she'd never really traveled. And they were there for a month, working in an orphanage. And one of the students on that trip was picked up by their family by a private jet. Can you imagine the mixed messages that give to kids to send them to Ghana for a month to do community service and then whisk them away in a private jet? Shirley is a summer search student from many, many, many years, and she wanted to say a few words today.
I'm here.
Yeah, stand up so everyone can see you.
Yeah, I wanted to, I read the book in one sitting pretty much, and I actually read it more like as a parent. I just had a little boy 18 months ago, and the section about insight and mentoring applies so well when you're dealing with children and when you're dealing with, and what I anticipate to be dealing with. And the stories from the 8 students that are here are actually inspired, very inspired. A lot of this brought flooded back memories of how when I met Linda in 1993, and I met her at Davidson Middle School, and I was 11 years old, and with Linda, her guidance, I mean, she became a part of my life on a week-to-week. Her office was in Mill Valley, next to her home, and it looked like a shack right next to her home out in
It was a shack.
Miller Avenue. In Miller Avenue, but if you make it right, this was 1993. And I wanted to speak from my heart today, so I have nothing really planned. And I've always kind of, I've benefited greatly from the summer enrichment programs through Linda and through the directors at the programs. It was very intimidating coming into the program, feeling like I was perhaps not up to par with how the level of expectation from everybody else. But I feel like the people that were actually involved in the program, like Doug at Deer Hill, he's mentioned in the book, they were following their passions. They were helping kids. They were, it didn't matter. They didn't look at me like I was with an elitist air. I mean, it was really, really supportive and amazing. I went to Deer Hill, and Colorado, Durango, Colorado, and this is when I was 15. But when I met Linda, we actually, she put me through a camp in Seattle. So I ended up going to, when I was 11, I was in an island off of Seattle and beautiful for 3 years.
Shirley, wind it up because I want to explain this so that because it's different when I just
Sorry,
recall it.
but the people there at the camp were so supportive. I just met them back. I went back to the camp to visit with my son last October. So I hope to, take a lot of the insight that Linda has, and I actually hope to, have my son go into the programs with my own financing. I actually opened up an account through an IRA, Coverdell savings account for education, as soon as he was born. And a lot of these programs really need our help. I know that Northfield, one of the programs I went through, they actually shut down. And
Shirley, thank you.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, thank you. Let me just explain that. In the beginning, I was really entrepreneurial. Four Winds called me. They have a camp for middle school kids. It's a beautiful camp, and they said our scholarships. Very few camps have scholarship programs, but they did, and we're committed to that. And they were getting students on free lunch in Seattle, but it wasn't working out. They weren't staying. They were quitting. Would I help them? And I said, well, and they said, well, if you do, and the students work out, we'll give you, we'll pay for their airfare. It's a month-long program or 6 weeks, month-long program, and we'll guarantee 3 years. Well, I said, I'll find the kids for you. So that was in the early days. We had a middle school as well. We don't do that anymore, but Shirley was a beneficiary of that, and it was great because Shirley had a lot of instability in her life, and now she's an accountant and a mother and taking care of herself. And she called me up and she said, I heard about your book. I said, I want to buy one. How can I do it? And I said, well, go on Amazon, Shirley. And she called me back and she said, Linda, they said there were just 20 left. So I got all 20.
I gave them to my clients.
Yes.
I'm curious how effective ways you found to support students who are like witnessing and experiencing these like really crazy and maybe like violent inequalities that's like going into these programs, and like effective ways you found to support students through that who are like really struggling, seeing just like other students who just like have everything like handed to them in some ways.
Well, you guys do a great job in Outward Bound and all the wilderness expeditions, but I'm so glad you're here. The critical point for these kids is they go off, they have this amazing transformative experience, and then they come home. And that's Sasha's going to speak to that in a few minutes. That's sort of the critical point where they really need the support, because it's like they've opened up. We all have a coat of armor on to protect us from things growing up, and they let go of that, and they've opened up, so they're sitting ducks in terms of coming home to the negativity and to the problems at home. I'll give you a quick story. This wonderful boy from East Oakland who did Deer Hill, I think, and he just loved it. And he came home. His brother picked him up at the airport. His father was drunk and was not driving very well. Andres started to tell him about the trip, and his brothers told him to shut up. He got home. His mother and father had separated while he was gone. So the house, which is normally chaotic, was just in a shambles. Nobody wanted to see his pictures. So he started pulling back from summer search and stopped calling in. And then about a month later, he started getting anxiety attacks and stopped going to school. So his mentor found him, went to the school the day he was there, pulled him out of class, and sort of gradually we got him back together and back in the program. So we just have to, we have to be aware of those critical points and be present and willing to go the extra mile when it comes up. Because it's playing with fire in many ways. Yeah. I think we have room for one more question, and then we're going to have a reading, which I'm really excited about. So, yes?
Well, connected to that last point, what's been going through my mind is a question about what kind of mental health support is available for a lot of these kids who may need it. and
Yeah.
things come up, like your example, but probably many things along the way.
Yeah. Well, through the schools, the mental health services are problematic. We have somebody here from the family and children's counseling service here in San Rafael. We try and, as Ryan said, we're trying to get more connected with whatever existing resources there are. But the key is also it does happen of course, but we try and identify strengths in kids. And kids that are really, really unstable and just barely holding themselves together, we try and not subject a student like that to the kind of stress and challenge that we do. We don't always do that, but when things do blow up on us, we try and do everything we can for that student in terms of hooking them up to the appropriate resources. Yeah. Yes, Ryan.
To add on a little bit, the greatest resource is actually our peers, all the other students that have been through the same thing or in the same type of economic situation. It actually helps a lot where you just don't hear 1, 2, 3, 10, 20 stories. You actually hear more than that. And in our outreaches, in our meetings, when all the students come together, right, it helps those students to find that kindred spirit to share. Even though that it's been that kind of thing, I think, when I was growing up, that helped me a lot, where, yes, there are all kinds of students from the different kind of economic background and the different kind of languages. But the main thing is that even if we can't find an adult to talk to, we can at least talk to each other, and that makes a bigger difference, I think, and having a group to identify with, that helps a lot more too, even though if we don't necessarily talk to the advisors, we talk amongst ourselves, and that helps.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you guys for coming. This is a huge, I was in Seattle and spent an extra night there so I could go to a bookstore up there, and 3 people came and 1 fell asleep and the other was hard of hearing. So this is really wonderful and I'm so appreciative and so grateful. So thank you.
Good thing you're resilient.
Sasha Cabriga, the first year, one of the first students in the program. Yes.
I always have to do that. Thank you, Linda. I know how much reading out loud you guys do, but the only reading I do these days is Harry Potter to my kids, so fortunately there's no Professor Dumbledore in this chapter, but it should be fine. All right. No man is an island. 2014. I'm riding in one of the most beautiful places in the world, San Francisco, California, where the blue of the sky hits the velvety green of the distant mountains. I can hear my daughters playing close by. I'm here. I'm complete. I'm me. 1990. I'm sitting at a table in our small 1-bedroom apartment about to dial a number. Late afternoon sun peeks through the shades. It's almost spring, and I'm almost 17. I had spent years dreaming of coming to America. America, the land of plenty, the land of unlimited possibilities and happy outcomes. Except, it doesn't feel that way. You see, I'm an outsider, a teenage one at that. My mother speaks no English, and at the age of 46 has limited employment opportunities. We're receiving AFDC, a type of welfare assistance. Yet at my new high school, I'm surrounded by kids from the wealthy suburban families, also polished, capable, going places. They can express themselves, they have friends, and lunch money, and college plans. I don't. When you're poor, depressed, and a foreigner, the I starts to disappear. The self is to be hidden, obliterated, because if there's no self, you can't be depressed, lonely, or hurt. The call I'm about to make is to this woman. The Jewish Family and Children's Services Agency had told me she might be offering a trip of some sort. Some unseen force is moving me to pick up the receiver. I'm incredibly self-conscious about my English. I hate speaking on the telephone and hate speaking to strangers, and this one is an American to boot. Everything inside me should be rebelling, yet somehow I feel very calm. I pick up the phone, I dial, she picks up. We talk about me. There are long pauses. She makes a space, and then she waits. Somehow in my shriveled and depressed self, I find the courage to step into that space, to expose myself, to make myself vulnerable. I later reflect that this is the essence of love, to make yourself vulnerable and yet be accepted. Although I didn't have the words to express it, I felt something very powerful. Towards the end of the call, she tells me about a biking trip in the Northwest. Then she says, "Oh yes, there's also a trip to Israel." I said that I don't want to go to the Northwest, I want to go to Israel. In hindsight, this seems so minor, but at the time, the ability to say no and to acknowledge what I wanted was momentous. After only 45 minutes, the I was beginning to reappear. The journey back to me had begun. 25 years have passed since that moment, the importance of which has only grown stronger in retrospect. There was an adult, a stranger who seemed to care for me. Not some invented self, but me as I was, with all my weakness and sadness. There must be something valuable, something special about me, even as the rest of the world seemed to convey the opposite, I concluded, if only subconsciously. And since I'm valuable, I'm not powerless. I can do things. I can break free of my limitations, even if I don't quite yet know how. That interview was not the end, but the beginning of the journey. The sense of self-worth that budded in that moment was very fragile indeed. The sense of agency, of power to direct and impact my own destiny, was only a sapling. I needed more tending and support. And so came the trip to Israel, where I became a full-fledged member of the group, the person who was liked, respected, and perhaps most importantly, relied upon. I was not some little Soviet immigrant who could do nothing and was going nowhere. I was one of them, those fabulous, successful, and good-looking American teenagers. While my judgment about the merits of my peers was probably exaggerated, just like my judgment about the lack of merit in myself was overblown, the empowerment that I got from being a member of my group was transformational. I was turning into a new person, a person who was facing the world instead of hiding from it. As I returned home, armed with this new expanded view, and in the early stages of forging a new identity, the world I was familiar with has remained the same, full of limitations and hopelessness. It was at this point that I was at my most fragile. And so the ongoing relationship with her, my mentor, took on even more importance. She encouraged me to write an essay reflecting on my trip. The act of writing down my experiences was in itself incredibly important. Once committed to paper, there was no turning back from my new self. As I look back over what happened next, I have a lot to be proud of. I graduated from a university with top honors, got a master's degree in philosophy, worked for a top consulting firm, and graduated with an MBA from Harvard Business School. Currently, I'm a portfolio manager and a partner at a respected money management firm in San Francisco. I have 3 lovely daughters and a beautiful wife. I'm a member of several nonprofit boards and active in the philanthropic community. Yes, yet that's not the whole story. Without fully understanding it, I made a Faustian bargain. Summer Search opened the door to a world of opportunities and possibilities. It helped me develop the skills to navigate this new world, and seemingly didn't ask anything in return. So not true. Summer Search burdened me with a gift of insight about myself. While I'm ultimately responsible for my own life, no man is an island. To the extent that we become successful, we owe a debt of gratitude to the people who are willing to help us on our way. For most kids, these people are their family and their community. For Summer Search kids, these people are complete strangers. I have benefited from her. She who gave up her comfortable life to spend 12-hour days to mentor students such as myself and to remain committed year after year to their success. And I have benefited from the willingness of hundreds of other people who have never met me as they gave of themselves and their financial resources to ensure my success. There are now 157 listening mentors like her and thousands of students like me in 7 different offices nationwide. And those numbers are growing. As for me, I have gone from a student in the program to become a board member, donor, and a leader, with each step expanding my circle of moral concern. For many people, this circle includes only themselves, maybe their family. For others, It's a bit bigger. It includes their community. And for some, the lucky few, the circle extends to the other. And so 25 years later, I understand and live the true import of my summer search experience through the desire and the power to not only enlarge my own life, but the burning need to expand my circle of moral concern, to change the lives of the other. No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less. Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind. And therefore, never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. Thank you.